the US is saying that Arunachal Pradesh is now part of India. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's your take on this, Carl?
So US decided to involve itself in all the territorial dispute all around China, right? And China actually, so South China Sea, that's a maritime dispute. China actually settled its land border dispute with all the countries except India and Bhutan. And Bhutan is because India controls Bhutan's foreign policy.
It, yeah.
So basically, India is the only one standing that has a land border dispute with China. China even settled its land border. China settled its land border dispute with Vietnam and with Russia, with Tajikistan, in the 2000s. So it's been 20 years. But India is a one that's a one that that's sticking out.
Well, it's India.
Yeah, because China actually back in 1950s, Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai has offered a deal, a compromise deal. So like, okay, you claim some of our land, we claim some of the land you control. So why don't we do a swap? Why don't we give up on our claims on each other's control territory and make demarcate the current the line of actual control as the international border. So very reasonable. I mean, like China would have give up the claim of what now India calls Arunachal Pradesh in return for India giving up the claim in Aksai Chain. And at that time, India rejected. The reason India rejected this compromise proposal is because the whole India-China border dispute is a legacy of British colonialism. Because the British India, the officers of British India, they drew a map, they drew a line on the map and says this is a new border now. And especially when a particular guy called Henry McMahon, he went to the Tibet-India border, and he realized, wow, there's a section of Tibet that's south of the Himalayas, and he's like, okay, that's not acceptable, because at that time British was engaged in this great game against the Tsarist Russia for influence in Central Asia. And British have this perennial fear that Russia is going to come down south and take India away from them. And India for British was their precious, my precious. Nobody can get a hand on my India. So they want to carve up as much buffer territory as possible. And that's when they created the Wakhan corridor in Afghanistan. People look at the map of Afghanistan. There's a very narrow strip called Wakhan corridor that separates Tajikistan and Kashmir, and that was created to separate Russia from British India. And so similarly, they wanted to expand their influence into Tibet, but they also want to get more territory under their control. So they're looking to demarcate the border. And Henry McMahon, when he realized there was a portion of Tibet that's south of Himalaya borders, he's like, "Oh my God, that's not acceptable, because we need to have the high ground. If the Russians somehow come through Tibet, they will be able to come down to India and take our India away from us." So he decided to unilaterally draw a line. This line will be known as McMahon Line. That will cut, instead of the traditional boundary, it goes across a crest of the Himalaya mountains. So we'll leave this portion of Tibet that was south of Himalayas as part of British India. Except the British, after they drew a line, they never enforced it. They just published the map, and then they went to, because the Tibetan government from Lhasa still administered the land south of the Himalayas. And then in 1930s, during the World War II, when Japan launched the invasion of China, that's when British got nervous again, and British is afraid that somehow Japan is going to come over and take over Tibet and threaten India. So they're like, okay. Then they went to their archive. They dust out this map they drew from the early 20th century. This like, oh, okay, we have a claim line right here. Let's enforce our claim. So in 1930 to 1947, that's when the British finally sent troops, British Indian police, to that area to enforce their claim, to kick out the Tibetan government representatives. And so this is a legacy of colonialism. And the thing is, when China resolved its border dispute with Myanmar, it inherited the same problem, because when British controlled Myanmar as part of British India, you also unilaterally drew a lot of line and had a lot of dispute with China. But China said, okay, we understand this is a legacy of colonialism, but we want to have a develop friendly relationship with our neighbors. So we're not going to let this border dispute to stand in the way. So in the end, China says, yes, this colonial border was the result of unequal treaty from the past, but we're willing to accept it. So China accepted the McMahon Line on the between the border of China and Myanmar. So this negotiation happened before the border negotiation with India. The Indian government, they thought, okay, we knew China's bottom line. China is they already recognized McMahon Line on their border with Myanmar, so they're probably gonna recognize McMahon Line on the border with us. So but we're still gonna stick by our claim on Saiching, on the western sector. So there's no give and take, and then the border negotiation broke down, and then that eventually led to the border war in 1962. Yeah. So because of that, China never recognized this Indian occupied territory south of Himalayas as Indian territory. So this is the origin of dispute. But again, what does this have to do with United States? Why is U.S. inserting itself into this? I mean, U.S. is doing this, of course, to contain China. This is how U.S. is grouping India into Quad, its own U.S.-led alliance against China. But India is an interesting case, because India is not exactly like Korea, Japan, or the Philippines. India is not like a vassal state. India sees itself as a great power. It sees itself as inheritor of an ancient civilization. It sees itself as entitled to be a great power, just like China is. But at the same time, they're playing for India's interests, and they believe they're getting a better deal from U.S. if they align with U.S. against China. But at the same time, they maintain friendly relationship with Russia, because India has a traditional friendship with Soviet Union. So because India needs weapons, their domestic manufacturing just not up to par. They need to purchase weapons from either Russia or from the West, and align themselves with U.S. against China, allow them to access Western technology, the Western military technology. And this is, U.S. also talk about investing in nuclear reactors in India, I believe. And so this is a way they want to maximize their advantage for themselves by kind of straddling between the BRICS and the West, and to get the best of the deal from the both sides. I think that's India's game in this. And India's relationship with China, they will never go to a full-blown war with China. But the border dispute is, the reason I say they will never go to a full-blown war with China is because India-China had this border dispute for like forever, for like 70 years. Yeah. But they actually had a protocol says neither side will use firearm in the dispute. So when we see the fight, they're always fighting with sticks and stones. Each other bashing each other with bricks and sticks, and they're not using guns because neither side want to escalate. Both sides are nuclear powers. They don't want to escalate full-scale war. So the border, but the border tension itself is useful in India for Indian military. It's a way to get increased budget for the Indian military. You know, anytime they
Yeah.
want more spending, just pointing to the border issue with China. Like we need to defend against China. We need more budget. For Indian politicians, for both sides of the politicians, you know, both Modi, BJP, and also the Congress in opposition. The opposition will say, "You are not doing enough to counter China." You know, the ruling party is not doing enough, and the Congress, the Modi's like, look, we are being tough on China. We're flexing on China. So this is an election issue. So whenever like India has an election, you're gonna see the border tension flare up. Like it's like a almost periodically coincides with the Indian election cycle. And so the border issues continue to fester between India and China. You're gonna create tensions. U.S. of course encourage that. U.S. they already they have been pretty open about U.S. providing satellite intelligence to the Indian side on the dispute. And so the tension unfortunately will keep going for a while because there's vested interest on the Indian side to keep it going, and there's Washington also is encouraging it. But the two sides are not gonna, this is not gonna develop into a full-blown war. I mean, same kind of situation in South China Sea and over Taiwan Strait right now. The tension will be kind of stoked, but people will back away from actual full-blown war. This is my take.
Yeah. But at the end, India will be holding the end of the stick, in my opinion. Here is where I see it problematic, Carl, is that India is part of BRICS. China is in BRICS. Well, you would think if this border issue can be resolved, that's problematic. It sends the wrong message to the rest of the world as far as the economic bloc.
Well, see, the thing is that BRICS originally it's an economic alliance. It's not a military alliance, right? It's not a geopolitical alliance. It's an economic alliance. But yeah, India itself, it's very wary of allowing Chinese businesses and Chinese investment into India because they feel that they're scared of a Chinese takeover. I mean, India always run a very protectionist policy, trade policy. This is why China, on the other hand, is very much like to invest in India because India has a growing population. It's 1/5 of the world population living in India. India's economy is still growing. For a while, before the border tension flared up recently, China was the largest. Chinese companies was largest investor into the Indian tech startups. But the problem is Chinese money into Indian tech startup threaten certain Indian oligarchs. Like India is kind of in this way. India is similar to United States. India has a bunch of oligarchs who control key industries. Ambani, for example, they're the main financial backer for Modi. Ambani, they have monopoly. They're expanding their monopoly into tech, and they don't want to see all these Chinese finance Indian startup to compete with them. And so they also have an interest to keep the Chinese competition out. And this is led to the Indian ban on TikTok after the border tension. And after Chinese ban on TikTok, Ambani, they went to work with Zuckerberg of Facebook to form this the joint venture called Geo. And so basically what it is they create a wrapper, like Facebook provides the core platform, and Geo is just an Indian wrapper on top of that. But this allowed them to gain a monopoly in the Indian social media space, because they can't compete with TikTok. This is why U.S. is trying to ban TikTok right now, is because Facebook and Google can't compete. But India was a little bit step ahead of the game. They just banned TikTok so they can have the Indian market to themselves in cahoots with Facebook. But that's how. But
also, Carl, because the U.S. pressured India. They pressured them for the 5G. When Huawei was about to do Yeah, it was the US that pressured India, and India got scared because they were scared of the sanctions. So they said to the Chinese Huawei company, no, we're not going to allow 5G here because it's not going to work, whatever. I mean, they were scared. They couldn't take stand on that. So to me, that says the story right there.
David, this is another reason the West and its client state is going to be left behind in technology, because U.S. where's the 5G in U.S.? You know, where's the 5G rollout? China is already moving on to 6G. You know,
6G.
and and the U.S. is kind of stuck in this techno limbo because they're dead set against blocking out, you know, Chinese influence. So a lot of the Chinese, a lot of the U.S. and its vassal states, including UK, they're gonna fall behind, further and further behind, and they're gonna become it's gonna be like the techno feudalism in the West. That's what I call it. The techno feudalism by few oligarchic firms like Facebook and Google, and who are all closely embedded with the national security and military industrial intelligence complex.
Wow. Yeah, I don't see things gonna bode well for India towards the end anyway, one way or another. So